Greetings, everyone. I want to tell you a quick story about the first time I ran into the worst jerk. Not only was she the worst jerk of all time, not only was she a micromanager, but she was also a narcissist. And people either couldn't stand her or they feared her. For me, it was both. I couldn't stand her and I feared her. And she was the type who loved to drop her title and throw it in people's faces. I mean, she would say things like, as your director, I want you to do this. As your director, I need you to do this. And this one time, I was responsible for putting this report together for our executives who were coming into town for their quarterly visit. And as I'm putting this report together, my boss is literally hovering over me, standing above me, telling me what information to put in and what information to leave out of my report. But I come across some information that I know our executives want to know about because they just mentioned it before in a memo a couple of weeks ago, and they were expecting an update in the report. So I proceeded to add that information in. I took the initiative to go do it. And my director, she looks down, she goes, no. Leave that information out. Just leave it out. So I look up and I said, but boss, I think we need to put this information in the report. The execs are looking for it. So I continue to type away. When I feel this tap on my shoulder. And she says, stop typing and look up at me. So I look up at her and then she looks down at me, she points at me, she goes, you work for me. And as your director, I'm telling you to leave that information out. Are we clear? I don't know, Sans folks, do you think I left that information out? Yeah, I did. I did leave that information out. I told you I was afraid of her. I was new at the job. I didn't want that smoke at all. And so lo and behold, later that week, the execs come to town for their quarterly visit. They're in the executive conference room talking to my director. I'm at my desk typing away on another project. When I get a call, and it's my director, and she goes, Eric, the execs would like you to come into the room and talk about your report. So I'm thinking, yes, my 15 minutes of fame has finally arrived. I get FaceTime and visibility with the bigwigs, with the execs. So I step about 2 feet into the room, and my director immediately says, Eric, these execs are wondering where a specific piece of information is in the report, and it's not there. I want you to go back to your desk and don't come back until it's in there. Are we clear? Can you believe that? Can you believe that? What would you do if you were me? I know some people are saying, oh, I would throw her under the bus. I would tell her off. I would do this, I would do that. But let me tell you something, folks. I didn't do anything like that. You want to know what I did? Here's what I did. And no, my computer did not freeze. That was my reaction. I stood there for several seconds. It felt like a lifetime. And because I just couldn't believe that she would do something like that. But see, maybe some of you may have dealt with a similar situation like I have. But maybe you might be going through a different jerk situation or another conflict in the workplace that is causing you to feel burned out and overwhelmed. Maybe you've asked yourself, how much longer can I put up with this? Or maybe you're sick and tired of your talented employees leaving left and right. Or maybe you just don't know where to go to for help. But don't worry about it, because today I got you covered. Some of you may be wondering about, what can I do to keep my employees? And I've got that for you too. Because you're in the right place if you're a CISO and presenting to the board about cybersecurity issues, possible threats, is something that horrifies you, you're in the right place. You're also in the right place if you're a cybersecurity leader and talking to different stakeholders and colleagues makes you feel uncomfortable. I've got something for you too. And you're also in the right place if you are a director or you're a manager and dealing with difficult people on your team is something that you dread. You are absolutely in the right place, and I've got something for you as well. And if you just want some techniques to help your teams, your favorite employees, your talented employees stay, well, you're definitely in the right place. So it doesn't really matter where you are when it comes to working with jerks, to dealing with conflict or building relationships. I'm here to help, and I'm looking forward to it. So that's why today what we're going to cover is I'm going to be sharing with you some specific techniques and strategies for not only how to work with jerks, but manage conflict and build stronger relationships with the people that you serve. Specifically, we're going to talk about the common mistakes people make towards managing conflict. We're going to talk about how to manage your emotions and diffuse tense situations. We're also going to talk about how to build team synergy and cohesion, so that way you all can drive consensus and work together cohesively. We're also going to talk about how to build trust and influence in the workplace. And no, it's not like this slide. It's something completely different. And make sure you hang out to the end, because I've got some awesome resources to share with you. If you scan this QR code, not only will you get access to the slide deck, but you'll also get access to my leader's guide to managing difficult relationships, my guide to how to work with jerks and prevent from becoming one yourself. You'll also be able to receive a complimentary consultation with me so we could talk about your workplace situation. Maybe you're working with a jerk, or maybe you fear you might be a jerk, or maybe you've got a conflict situation you just want to talk through. I'm here to help. And if you'd like to purchase a signed copy of my book, How to Work with Jerks, Jarek mentioned it himself, all you got to do is scan the QR code and subscribe. Now, we can test this out right now. If anyone, the first person who is able to test out this QR code, make sure it works perfectly, you will get a free signed copy of my book, How to Work with Jerks. So why don't you all feel free to go ahead and scan the QR code and subscribe right now. And while you're doing that, I want to tell you another story, but this story is about the first time I ran into a jerk. And I remember it so vividly because I was sitting in my all-white Pontiac Grand Am, and I was staring at myself in the rearview mirror. So I want to tell you all about a time where I became a jerk. You see, when I graduated from college, I was brimming with confidence. You couldn't tell me nothing, because not only did I graduate from a really good school with honors, but I got the very first job that I applied to. So I was brimming with confidence. And when I got on board to that job, I was assigned a mentor. And what's a mentor designed to do? Show you the ropes, help you get acclimated to the job, right? But see, I didn't see it that way. I saw it as my mentor trying to tell me how to do my job. I mean, think about it. She would say things like, no, Eric, don't do it this way. Do it that way. You get a better result. No, Eric, this is what the boss really wants you to do. And this is how you do it. No, Eric, this is how you treat your clients. Trust me, do it this way. And so one day I said to her, who do you think you are talking to me like this? Don't you know I graduated with honors from a very good school? Hey, I was successful then, and I can be successful here. So thanks, but no thanks. Do you think my mentor was trying to help me out after that? Not at all. She said, fine, have at it. Good luck. But see, I wasn't just rude to my mentor, I was rude to Charlie. Charlie was one of the most senior members on the team. He was known for having this warm smile, the kind of smile that really lights up the room. And rumor had it that Charlie was going to retire pretty soon. And I remember Charlie introduced himself to me for the first time. He said, hi, Eric, my name's Charlie. Welcome aboard. I'm here to help. How you doing? And so I looked at Charlie, I shook his hand, I said, hi, Charlie, nice to meet you. I guess I was hired here to replace you, huh? That was the last time I saw Charlie smile, ever. And so I was rude to my mentor, I was rude to Charlie, I was rude to all my other coworkers. I was abrasive and condescending to my clients and to my customers, until everything came to a head one cold winter morning. My boss, he summoned me to his office. And he said, Eric, I just walked by your desk and you've got a stack of paperwork almost as tall as you. What's going on? This isn't why we hired you. I'm sorry, if you can't turn things around immediately, I'm gonna have to let you go. Folks, I was devastated. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And as I was about to leave his office and make a beeline to the bathroom to go cry, my boss, he threw me a lifeline. He said, but wait a second. I want you to attend an emotional intelligence course. And I'm thinking, emotional intelligence? Wait, first you threatened to fire me, and now you're trying to tell me that I have dumb emotions, so I need to take an emotional intelligence course to have smarter emotions? But he proceeded to explain that, no, he said, Eric, I've seen how you behave in the workplace, how defensive you get when people ask you questions about your work, how argumentative you are when people disagree with you, how abrasive you are to your clients. And I think this can really help you out. But make no mistake about it, y'all. He wasn't recommending, he wasn't suggesting that I attend these courses. I was voluntold. My job depended on it. And thank goodness I attended that course, because when I attended that course, I was amazed just how much of a jerk I was behaving. I mean, I remember just how much I was going tit for tat with people in the workplace, how I always had to be right, never wrong, how I was just being real petty with my customers. And that's where I found myself after that class in the parking lot, sitting in my all white Pontiac Grand Am, staring at myself in the rearview mirror saying, man, I am a jerk. Now, look, truth be told, all right, I said something a lot harsher than the word jerk, all right? But because we're at the SANS Cybersecurity Leadership Summit, we'll just stick with jerk, okay? And so, but once I became aware that I was a jerk, I became aware of all the mistakes I was making. For starters, I was wasting precious time. I was not getting any work done because I was avoiding Charlie. I was avoiding my mentor because I didn't want to go to them for help. I was too proud. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction that I needed their help. I was spending time going tit for tat with people, gossiping, arguing with other people, doing anything other than my job itself, which is no wonder why my boss was so concerned I had a stack of paperwork almost as tall as me. The next mistake I was making, y'all, I was disengaged. I didn't have to have a seat at the table. I wasn't increasing my impact and influence with anyone. I was invisible. I couldn't even do the bare minimum, probably because I didn't know how to do my job. And so as a result of this, I was disengaged. But did you know before COVID, there was a survey done by Gallup that determined that over 60% of employees are disengaged in the workplace. And not only are they disengaged, but this translates to over $450 billion in lost productivity. Ask yourself this question. Is your team disengaged? The next mistake I was making is that I was a terrible teammate. People, they wanted to work with me. They wanted to collaborate, but I saw it as an opportunity to compete, to be first, to be right, to be better than everyone else. You see, my ego became my amigo, and people just couldn't stand that. So I was isolated. People wanted nothing to do with me, and it was tough. And so once I understood all the mistakes I was making, I went on an evolution from being an expert jerk to a jerk expert. And this unique experience gave me the opportunity to work with people who have trouble working with jerks, managing conflict, and building relationships. And so once I wrote the book, How to Work with Jerks, I was getting feedback from all types of people about just really what a jerk is. I'm sure a lot of you can come up with a bunch of examples of what a jerk is. Rude, condescending, somebody like me, my boss, whatever. And so I had so many examples that I couldn't possibly put it in a book. I had to come up with a broad definition that casts a wide net, but still resonated with people. And so that's why in the book, I define a jerk as someone who doesn't use social skills as a necessary job skill. And I want to emphasize the word necessary because social skills is not just a nice thing to have. It's a necessity. And you'll see in the slides to come why it's so necessary. But this is usually the aha moment that people reach when they attend some of my How to Work with Jerks programs, because a lot of times they come in thinking, yes, Eric, you're going to help me work with that jerk because that person's a jerk. That person's getting on my nerves. They're the problem, not me. But then when they understand that anybody can be a jerk if they don't adopt social skills as a necessary job skill, that's when the aha moment comes on. And they come to me and they say, Eric, I think I might be the reason why my team's leaving. I think I might be the reason why we can't get anything done. I think I'm the reason why I've got this toxic workplace. Can you help? And of course, I'm more than happy to help. But there are really 5 reasons why people act like jerks. The first is incompetence. You heard it earlier. I think it was either Jarek or Frank. They mentioned it earlier about people, especially in IT, who get promoted from a technical position because they've done that job very well. They get promoted to a leadership position. The only problem is they lack the skill set needed to lead people. It's just like Marshall Goldsmith once said. He said, what got you here won't get you there. You need a whole nother skill set needed to lead people. And that's what happens when you don't have that skill set. You can lash out at your own team and act like a jerk. Other people can feel stress. You know the stress that comes with being in cybersecurity. You have to stay on top of everything all the time. And sometimes that work bleeds into your personal life. And you can lash out at your family members and your friends and be abrasive towards them, the people that love you the most. Another reason is overwhelm. We can be so overwhelmed with trying to keep up with the latest and greatest technologies, trying to protect your organization from cyber threats and hacks. And that could lead to burnout because you're constantly trying to keep up and you're constantly trying to be in tune with the latest and greatest technologies. We can also have learned behavior. If anyone knows what it's like to work with a jerk and doesn't really realize it, you may unknowingly step into another environment and become a jerk yourself just because you learned it through somebody else. And the last thing is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of being wrong, fear of failure, fear of getting hacked, fear of that cyber threat. Some of those things can keep you up at night, and I'm sure it does. But when we fear these kind of things, we can lash out in the wrong way. and take it out on all types of people, especially the people that are trying to help us the most. But there's really two types of jerks. There are jerks who are unaware that they are jerks, meaning no one's bothered to tell them, and that's how they're acting. And then there are jerks who are aware, but they just don't care because they believe that leading through fear and intimidation is the most effective way to get anything done. Now, remember I talked about the importance of social skills. Don't take my word for it. Just take a look at this chart here, because as the rise of automation means that job candidates will need uniquely human skills. These human skills are the social skills I was talking about earlier, because as jobs become increasingly automated, employers are seeking workers with skills that machines can't replace. So think about what AI is doing these days, right? That's going to be replacing a lot of job functions. Now, there's going to be a strong demand for these types of social skills. Now, look, check this out. 3/4 of employers are saying that these kind of skills, communication skills, listening skills, critical thinking skills, and interpersonal skills, those are extremely important to gaining leadership positions at their organizations. Now, if you're a leader now and you don't have these dialed in, you may have to ask yourself what things you need to do differently for a better outcome. And so I feel compelled to talk about some of the myths that I come across when working with jerks, because I come across a lot. And so I wanted to spell a few of them right now. The first is people think it's better to avoid working with a jerk, all right? 76% of employees say it's better to avoid working with a jerk or dealing with conflict. But you have to understand something. Conflict is unavoidable. It's only a matter of time before things come to a head. And if you just let things simmer, it can explode right in your face. And you need a set of skill sets to manage that situation. So it's not better to avoid. You need to confront those situations. You just need a skill set to do it. The next thing is people say, I'd rather quit. Hey, you can be just like the millions of Americans who are participating in today's great resignation. Go ahead and quit for greener pastures. Just know, just because you're quitting because of your current workplace, you're dealing with a jerk, doesn't mean that next workplace won't have a jerk. It's almost like Michael Douglas said in the movie Wall Street. He said, same dog, different fleas. Well, different jerk, different place to work, same kind of jerks. So you need to be able to manage that situation. Another thing is people say, it's all good. No jerks exist on my end. More power to you. Fantastic. I'm happy for you. I bet you some people on this call are probably a little envious, maybe a little jealous too. But just remember that it may be all good now. You may love the people that you're working, but these people can move on to other jobs. They can unfortunately pass away. And they could be replaced with jerks who can turn your whole life upside down. The other thing is people say HR will save the day. I think a couple people mentioned HR earlier today. And HR, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But just keep in mind that if you go to HR with your situation, a jerk can go to HR with their own version of the situation. So now HR, they have to investigate, meaning now you got two sides and it's going to take several months, maybe up to a year to resolve. All the while, you may still have to work with that person. Wouldn't it be nice to have a set of skill sets to help you manage it during that time? I think so. The next thing is people say I can handle it on my own. That is fantastic. More power to you. We have our own habitual way of dealing with conflict, dealing with jerks. But just know that sometimes that habitual way of dealing with it can make a bad situation worse. So you need a set of skill sets that can help you manage it. And the last thing is people think that conflict or confrontation is bad. No, it's good. You heard from Jason Loomis earlier. Conflict is good. Healthy conflict is great because it allows you to innovate, problem solve, get to know another perspective, and it allows you to have a safe environment where people can solve problems and have different perspectives. And so wouldn't you like to know where you or your team falls on as far as being proficient in conflict management? Well, here's my handy dandy chart that I give with people that I work with that really shows where you may fall in this lines of conflict management proficiency. So for starters, we have the basic, intermediate, advanced, and expert. Now, if I spent 20 minutes of my time with you, I could immediately identify where you fall or where your team falls on this chart and recommend a roadmap for how you need to be, for where you need to accomplish moving forward. Now, what happens if you or your team isn't even at the basic level of being able to manage conflict? I'm sure you can connect the dots yourself. It's utter chaos. Think about the proverbial Category 5 storm where it destroys everything in sight. And you need like the Coast Guard or somebody like me to come help you out. But if you're at the basic level, yeah, you may be able to manage certain conflicts, but still there's no productivity, there's no joy in where you work because that conflict constantly occurs, and you need to be able to get past that so that way you could be more productive, because it's almost like pulling teeth to get anything done. But if you're at the intermediate level, then yeah, you may be able to deal with some conflict, but there's still no joy. Just like a category 5 storm that comes and may take weeks to repair. Well, if you deal with conflict the wrong way with these folks, you can make a bad situation worse, and it'll take a long time to repair that relationship. So you need to be able to move over to the advanced level, which is where you start finding joy in what you do. Because at the advanced level, even if that storm comes or that conflict situation comes, you're able to address it rather quickly, maybe within a day's time. And not only are you able to do it quickly, you're able to see it as an opportunity for growth and perspective. And so now you've got two people who are on the same page, or multiple parties on the same page, and they're able to move forward from that conflict. Now, once you get to the expert level, now you're cooking with gas, because not only are you able to address that conflict rather quickly, extremely quickly, it's almost as if the conflict doesn't exist. You can confidently manage that conflict and navigate through working with those jerks. And you can come up with preventative measures to prevent those same conflicts from occurring. Just like I was talking about before about the basic level, where you may be able to address the conflict, but that same conflict keeps coming up because you haven't really addressed the holistic situation. Now, here are some tools that you can use right now to help you work with jerks and manage conflict. The first thing is recognition. It's the ability to understand your emotions and what's causing you to feel a certain way. And once you're able to understand your emotions and what's causing you to feel a certain way, you can take a more measured approach. You can respond thoughtfully, and you can see yourself more clearly, so that way you can initiate change. So how do you practice recognition? For starters, this is one of the 5-star elements that I have in my book, How to Work with Jerks. And so these are the techniques that help you not only work with jerks, but build those relationships. The first way to practice recognition is ask for informal feedback. Once again, I believe Jason Loomis mentioned this earlier, and that this helps you protect your blind spot and keep your head on a swivel. That means you can go to your direct reports, or go to your upper management, or even your colleagues, and say, hey, how did I do in this meeting? Or how do you think this discussion went? Or what do you think the board will think about this idea for mitigating this next threat? Then you can also think regularly and write in a journal. So I do this twice a day. In the morning, I write what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and allows me to really reflect on those things. And then in the evening, I'm able to revisit that and see how I'm thinking and how I'm feeling as well. So it allows me to really keep my head on a swivel. The next thing is take a personality test. There's plenty to choose from, but my favorite is a 360-degree assessment. This allows you to not only assess yourself and your own behavior, but you also get your peers to provide anonymous feedback. So now you have the full picture of how you are and how you're reacting. But my favorite thing to do is start asking the question what, not why. And I know a lot of us are trained to ask the question why all the time, especially when you're mitigating cyber threats. But when we ask the question why too much, such as, why do I have to work with this jerk? Why do I have to come back into the office? Why isn't my team on the same page? Why can I get my executives to get on board with my recommendation for preventing a cyber attack? Once we keep asking the question why like that, we're not trying to solve any problems. We're just venting. And so what we need to do is start asking the question, what? What can I do differently to work with this jerk? What can I do differently for a better outcome of the situation? What can I do differently to get the board members on my side? So once you ask the question, what, you proactively seek solutions to your problems. And this allows you to move forward from what you're feeling. And there are people just like you who might be going through this. And I have a good news story that I want to share. This lady, her name is Judith. She's now the director of IT, but she was recently promoted into a leadership position. It was in a toxic workplace, a really no-win situation. She sought my help to help her really understand what's going on and do a pulse check of the room. And not only was she able to manage that difficult workplace, she was able to expand her career growth, and it also led to another promotion. So it was really effective for her. And I love seeing these good news stories. But the other thing that you can do to work better with jerks is practice empathy. Now, look, I know probably everyone on this call is familiar with empathy, but what we may lose sight of is that empathy is hard. It is hard to empathize with someone you can't stand. It's hard to empathize with someone who doesn't align with your values. It's hard to empathize with a jerk. And so what you need to do is you need to leverage these techniques to help you do just that, because empathy allows you to seek to reflect and think about this and understand the thoughts and opinions of other people. It's just like Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he said it best when he said, seek first to understand before you can be understood. So how can you do that? The first thing is create a safe environment. Just like Jason Loomis said about psychological safety, you need to create an environment where people feel safe enough to ask questions, object the status quo, innovate, and problem solve. And once you do that, people feel included. They feel like they belong. They feel like they have a voice, and they're more than likely willing to stay in that workplace. The next thing you could do, empower. Don't micromanage. Don't be like my boss that I talked about in the beginning. Don't hover over people, making sure they do every little thing just how you want to. That's not effective. You need to be able to instill trust in people and trust that they and empower them to get the work done in their own way. And they can be just as effective, but you have to garner that trust. The last thing is listen, understand, and validate. This isn't easy either because it forces you to do this with someone that you don't necessarily agree with. And so this stands for LOVE, L-U-V, listen, understand, validate. And you need to listen to someone, understand, and validate their thoughts and opinions. And that could be difficult to do, but if you do this the right way, you can disarm a jerk in right where they stand. You can disarm a tense situation. This is ideal for having a tense situation or even giving a performance review with someone. If you're able to love someone by listening, understanding, and validating, it makes turns an argument from a tit for tat or an argument to a productive conversation. So you definitely got to have that dialed in. Michael Loggins, I just worked with him. He's a he's a VP of a global IT company. He and his senior IT leadership team was tasked with the daunting task of trying to consolidate all the global companies. And not only were they able to use empathy to drive change, now they have a seat at the table. And they're now looked at as a partner with the business side of the organization. You know how difficult it is for IT departments to have to be considered a partner with the business side. But if you empathize, you'll get there. I guarantee it. The next thing is conflict styles. So when we're in conflict with someone, we have the opportunity to discover, assess, and leverage multiple types of conflict styles. And if I were delivering my one-on-one coaching program or even my conflict resolution program with you, we'd be able to do a conflict management assessment where we would determine your primary and secondary conflict styles. I would be able to show you how and when to use them, and all the other conflict styles that's on this chart. Remember I told you that we have our own habitual way of dealing with conflict, and sometimes that leads us in the wrong direction. Well, if you adopt any of these 5 styles according to your situation, you'll be able to deal with it a lot more productively. And my favorite good news story here, Natalie Robinson, I was just working with her. She was in a really toxic workplace. She had to get out, but she didn't have a job to go to. So she sought my help to help her leverage these conflict styles to deal with that toxic workplace. And that was able to buy her time to secure her dream job, the job of her choice. And this took months to do, but this is just a text message that she shared with me recently that she had a great job interview and thanking me for her time. But since then, I'm proud to say that she got that new job, and she just reported a couple of weeks ago. So another good news story. The last thing I want to share with you all is my 3-step process for diffusing tense situations, managing conflict, and working with jerks. And that is the AAA method. And it stands for assess, analyze, act. When we're in conflict, our body's telling us that. Our heart could beat fast, our palms could be sweaty, our back can get tense, we can furrow our eyebrows, our mouth can get dry. And once your body's telling you this, you need to understand why. So that goes to step 2. What's your body why is your body stressed out? Well, maybe you have to go to the board and deliver some bad news. Maybe you're dealing with a bad employee or difficult employee at work, and it's taking all of your time away from the things that matter the most. Or maybe you're just having a tough day, and you're struggling with getting past it. Once you're able to assess and analyze, then you can go to step 3, which is act. This forces you to take a more measured approach, respond thoughtfully. So that way you don't make those knee-jerk reactions. Let's be real here, y'all. How many times have you been in conflict or been in a tense situation or been in an argument with someone and you said the first thing that was on your mind? I'm willing to bet you probably made a bad situation worse. By taking this 3-step process, it puts guardrails in place to keep you from doing that and making a bad situation worse. So it's assess, analyze, act. You do this, not only will you resolve those tense situations, but you'll get people more on your side, and you'll be able to handle any disagreement that comes your way. But you got to follow the assess, analyze, act method. And once again, I just wanted to quickly share, again, this handy dandy chart here. If I spent 20 minutes with you, I can help you identify where you stand and where your team needs to be in terms of managing conflict according to your situation. This is something, if you'd like a copy of, you'll have access to my slide deck and everything else. But this is all folded in to my How to Work with Jerks program. It's a complete solution for managing conflict and building relationships. Remember what Bobby Ford mentioned before about his reboot program? This is very similar to that, in that not only does it help train those talented employees, but it helps retain them as well and gives them the specific skill sets needed to work in this kind of cybersecurity environment or any kind of IT environment as well. So if you're interested in learning more about it, just scan the QR code, subscribe, and I'd be happy to share that information with you. And also, I want to make sure that this is available too, my How to Work with Jerks program. Success in the workplace isn't based on the work you produce, isn't based on the work you produce. It's based on the relationships you build. So build those relationships so that way you can work better with anyone, but especially those jerks.